Welcome to the Friday Habit with Mark Labriola and Benjamin Manley. The Friday Habit is for small business owners, freelancers, and creatives who are ready to take their business to the next level. Join us as we discover how to apply the strategies we learned to grow our businesses, make more money, and live every day like it's Friday. Yay, or fry-yay as I like to call it.
I love that. We have a team member of ours who goes Friday on all of our calls. It makes me so happy. Every Friday, we look forward to it.
It just brings a smile to your face, right?
It does.
I think
does.
That's why we try to live every day like it's Friday, because each day you can have that kind of excitement and feeling. It's
a Friday mindset. It's
That's
just
right.
A mindset.
Exactly. Hey, you might be listening to this podcast right now and be like, hey, who's that female voice amongst Ben and Mark? Well, it is Natalie Dawson. She is the EVP and partner of Cardone Ventures, a management consulting firm designed to help businesses grow, and the author of the new book, Teamwork: How to Build a High-Performance Team. This book covers all the nuts and bolts of what goes into building an incredible team, including what it takes to attract strong talent, how to write a compelling job description, and even the best practices for onboarding someone new. So, Natalie, welcome to the Friday Habit.
Thank you for having me. You even describing what the book is about, like most people, when they hear those things, unless they're really in the thick or the throes of having to do this, it's like the most boring content, like how to write the perfect job description. No one wants to read that book unless you are the person who needs to read that book. But we make it fun.
I'm that person right now. I need help writing job descriptions because, I mentioned before we started the show, but we're a team of 8 now looking to hire 3 more, and I need help figuring out exactly how to attract the right people.
Yes. Isn't that like the question? I mean, I could just go into that. I don't know if that's where you want to start. I just kind of
well, hey, before we get to that, I got a question for you.
Okay.
Would you rather be famous in your career field or celebrity famous?
Oh, my career field. I want to be the person that is known for how you build teams that work. So definitely in the career field. I don't know what celebrity famous gets you besides a lot of crazy people and stalkers.
Well, it might get you a free milkshake or something too.
That's true. Okay.
You know?
Well, what would you guys choose?
Or some Gucci like bags and stuff. I think I might go celebrity famous because then, when you go places, you'll get recognized and people will be like, hey, you're that guy.
I think Mark,
Okay.
I was going to guess you might go that way. I think you're probably one of the few people I know that would do that. But I mean, you've been in a band, you've been famous in that way before. So, you already know what it's like. You dabble
I've
in the
experienced
celebrity.
that. Yeah. I was on season 9 of American Idol. And when my episode aired, when I tried out and made it to Hollywood, I was like, I couldn't go to the mall without people being like, oh my gosh, I saw you on TV last night. And so I thought that felt kind of cool,
Do you still sing? Can
no,
you drop some bars?
No, I'm not that guy. I got to live my dream for a living, for like all my 20s, and then all my 30s has been building a business and, growing a team and doing all that, which has been awesome. So what about you? How did you get into, obviously Cardone is a big name, and, how did you get involved with that and kind of become this expert in your field? What has been your journey? Yes. Because you look super young to me. You look like a kid over here who's like,
thank you. If you want to guess my age, I won't be offended.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, okay. So if I just had to guess, I would say like 25.
Okay. That's somewhat close. I think part of it today is like I crimped my hair because I slept on it funny, so I feel like I look younger with this hairstyle. I'm 28.
Okay.
But I took over my first team when I was 20 years old. I took over this HR and essentially a sales team, and we called them professional development. And it was actually that experience is what made me want to write the book, because I had listened to the John Maxwell's and the Jim Collins, and I had read all of these leadership books. But when I actually had the experience of sitting down with my very first team and sharing with them what I was going to help them do with the department or what the goals were, I literally had no idea where to start. And I remember Googling like how to have a team meeting as a leader and what the agenda is. Like I wanted the tactics, and I felt like nobody provided in a cohesive manner the tactics. And so I got this team when I was 20, totally ill-equipped. I did a terrible job. I was the worst leader. I didn't know what I was doing. And at the time, my then boyfriend, now husband, like I took over this team. I'm 20. I'm dating the guy who owns the business. Like you can imagine all of the dynamics there. And it was failing. And so I really like dove into this like real practical knowledge of how do you lead and operationalize a team. And this experience was very scarring for me because I failed at it. I was totally terrible at it. And I did everything that I could read how to do. I probably read 50 books at the time to just figure this thing out. And it turned out the business model, we had some technology issues. And so that's ultimately why we shut that business down. I was 24 when that happened. And when we shut this business down, on one side, my husband was selling this other business that was the exact same business model in a different industry. And he sold it for 77 times earnings. The purchase price was $150 million. So we're having massive success with the same things on one side, and we're having total failure. And it was my responsibility primarily for this failure. And so I learned so much from that. And after selling the business and folding the other business down, we kind of sat back and said, what do we want to do in this next phase of our careers? And I looked up all of the social media people that are out there, and I stumbled upon Grant Cardone. And at first blush, I was like, this is not the guy. This guy is a freak.
He's pretty aggressive.
What is he doing sitting on this jet with his Gucci shoes? I was so turned off. I was like, absolutely not. But then I saw his wife, Elena, and I could understand him more through seeing the other side of his life. And so with that, I became a fan. I forced my fiance to become a fan, and we studied all of their material and showed up to one of their events and realized that in their audience they had a lot of business owners, but they were only offering sales training and real estate investing opportunities, whereas our expertise in the industries that we were in is helping these business owners that are small businesses, $1 million annually in revenue, grow to 5 million. We were very successful in being able to do that. There was this technology thing that just was a miss in this management company we had, but we know the nuts and bolts of the marketing and the financials and the HR and the sales training, the operations to get small business owners to grow. And so we partnered with Grant and Atlanta because we said, hey, we have this opportunity that we could be the venture arm of your guys' business and give us a shot. And they gave us a shot, and we now have 100 team members on our Cardone Ventures team. We've been in business for about 3 years now, and it's gone incredibly well.
That's awesome. That sounds like an adventurous, story. How did you, so you started when you were 20. So did you kind of go straight from like high school, the workforce, straight into doing business, or did you dabble in college? I never went to college. I took a semester of college, and I was like, all right, this is not for me, And so I just started doing right away. I picked up a camera and started teaching myself, photography and videography and graphic design, and just started doing these things. But what was that for you as far as like when you were younger? Did you always imagine doing, being an entrepreneur or, building businesses, or what did that look like?
I had that itch. I recognize that now in reflection. In middle school, I remember picking up a book called The Starbucks Experience, and I was just enthralled by Starbucks and how they branded themselves with the green straw. Like just as a seventh grader, like my mind was open to how brands actually get people's attention. But I was valedictorian in my high school class, and I went to college on a full ride academic scholarship. And 2.5 years into college, I decided to work for this company called Audigy Group, which is the business that my husband sold for the crazy multiple that it sold for. And I quit school. It's like, why would I need to learn what I'm learning when I could actually help build something over on this other side? That was also a terrifying decision, and one that I'm very thankful for. It's probably my proudest decision.
Quitting college? Your parents are like, what are you thinking?
Oh my gosh, my parents cried. They begged me not to. And I was financially dependent upon them, and they cut me off after that. They're like, listen, if you're going to do this, you have to figure this out. But I was making $8.33 an hour back then when I made that decision. So it felt very risky at the
Yeah.
time. And so, yeah, it was kind of, it wasn't this entrepreneurship thing, but I had this interest in business, and I saw this opportunity and didn't feel like I needed the stamp of approval from any collegiate organization to tell me that I could make it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing that, my wife was a Division I soccer player in college, and, she really values that. And then again, I had kind of a different experience. And so, looking at my kids now, I have 3 kids, and one of them's about to go into high school. And so I'm thinking about like, oh man, he's going to be in college maybe in, 5 years. And so thinking about like, well, like, do I encourage him to go do that? Because in the same way I've found success in, finding something that I'm passionate about and then pursuing that. And,
Yep.
finding a way to provide value to people through my skills and then charging for it. And so,
Totally.
there's an element of like, hey, like, why don't you just go apprentice somewhere? Or like, if you find something you're into, like, go shadow somebody and kind of, especially nowadays with YouTube and all the other things that you can learn. I mean, even you want to like make t-shirts, you can buy a screen printing machine for like $400 and start designing and selling
sure.
t-shirts, so it's a definitely, I think, a new era where I know so many people who have college degrees and are making minimum wage, working at a Starbucks or doing something. And it's like, man, like, they have been counseled to go to college, or should they? I don't know. I think it's an interesting question, because a lot of people, I think, do go to school and find value in that, and they maybe grow up a lot and they learn a lot of skills in college. But in the same way, I feel like, is it just throwing your money away? Unless you want to be a lawyer or a heart surgeon or something where it's like you really need these technical skills, I don't know.
For sure. I feel the same way. If you need it, like, both of my parents are medical doctors. They clearly had to go to
Right.
college and med school in order to be able to do the field of their choice. However, I think college, for me anyway, it actually prohibited me from learning how to learn, because I wasn't actually interested in those topics. Whereas now today, I would mention to you guys earlier, I took over this marketing department. I've read 10 books in the last 3 weeks about ClickFunnels and how to write copy and design principles. Like, I'm just learning, but my ability to actually take on a new subject is so different as somebody who's trying to apply something versus being told you need to take this accounting course in order to graduate.
Man, that sounds like so much fun, getting to do a crash course and learn that much stuff all at once. I would love that.
Oh man, well, so much fun. I'm having lots of fun.
Yeah.
So
That's
so
awesome.
much fun over here.
That's great. You're like totally immersed in it. Well, man, I would love to learn a little bit more about what you cover in your book. Do you mind giving us like a little bit of an overview of like the types of things you cover in your book, so we can kind of understand a little bit more about that? And then I made a list of questions for you that are like super practical, because these are some things like, like I said before, I was like, hey, maybe we can turn this into Ben's free coaching session for his business about how to grow a team. So if you're open to that, I'd love to learn a little bit about your book. And then I have actually some really specific questions about growing a team, how to get your team members on the same page about certain things and stuff like that. So I'd love to go through those too. But first, maybe you could tell us a little bit about teamwork.
I love it. Yeah, for sure. So teamwork, as I mentioned, I wrote it because I think that people are missing like the practical tool set. I think there's a lot of tools out there. There's like, oh, you need a mission statement, and oh, here's a job description. But there's nothing that I found that is from start to finish what a business owner needs in order to properly set up a team and to review a team and to create a culture that operates and hits targets, real financial targets, but also that you enjoy working with these people. And it's not just this crammed down traditional agency model, or even I think of like the big four, like consulting companies, financial firms, where it's just, there's so much pressure and people do it because they want to be able to say on their resume, oh, I worked at this place, but it's actually a horrible place to work. And so for small businesses, they don't have the choice to be these big brands. They're not Nike, they're not McKinsey, they're not Apple. And in order to create that, I broke the book into 3 different sections. The first section is called alignment. So it's all of the things that you have to do in order to truly align a team member. It starts with your mission, your vision, your core values. It starts with how you interview them and the process that you go through to ask them the right questions so that when they aren't actually performing or doing the things that they said that they were going to do in the interview, you have some sort of a mechanism to say, hey, wait, you said this thing. I thought you were interested in this, instead of you not knowing and then not having, it's almost like, it's not leverage in a bad way, but it's leverage in a coaching relationship, which I believe all business owners are coaches to their team members. They're not employers. They're not bosses. You're responsible to be a coach.
Yes, exactly.
The second part of the book is around this development phase. So once somebody's aligned and they get what you're doing, they get why you're doing it, they understand their role and what they're responsible for. In order for a business to grow, you are assuming your team members are going to help you grow it, or you're going to bring in outside team members to help you grow it. But those are really the only two things that need to expand, and those are your only two options within your environment. So instead of just creating a culture where you always have to hire outside talent who are experts, which oftentimes fails in departments because the outside experts blow out your existing team members who have all of the historical knowledge and the relationship with your customers. So how do you get team members to want to develop? And what I was just talking about, read books to learn new skills that are valuable, that add revenue to the business. So that's what the second phase is all about, how you get people to want to develop. The third phase is transition. So there's two types of transition in any organization. There's upward transition, meaning somebody moves from a marketing manager to a senior marketing manager, and then maybe they would move to a director of marketing. But there's this upward mobility in the transition. There's also the second type of transition, which would be having somebody transition out of the organization, either through them quitting or a business owner firing them. And so I talk through why you would do both, but how to make the firing piece just not as emotional and difficult and potentially as drawn out as most business owners really make it, because it becomes this really heavy thing.
Yes, it's so true. You become, I think become so
someone.
Connected. You know, I've painstakingly, just had conversations with Ben. Like, I think I need to fire this person, but I don't know if I should, and maybe I can turn around the relationship, or like, it's been one of those things where it's hard too. I think when you're a small team too. I mean, and you said that you work with a lot of businesses that are like $1 million, and so obviously at $1 million, you're probably a small team of 4 or 5 people, depending. And so you become very close. And so then it's hard, I think, as a business owner sometimes to make some of those difficult decisions, or like know when to hire a new person, or, when to let somebody go, and all that kind of stuff. So, what do you see as far as that goes, as far as like navigating some of those things as a smaller company? A lot of our audiences maybe are only 2, 3, 4 people. What does that look like? Does it look different being smaller than it is when you're a team of like 20, 30 people?
I don't think it has to look different if you're smaller than if you're bigger, but what does have to be in place is, in most cases, the desire to be bigger. And I do believe that if a business owner thought that they could have, if they currently have $1 million business, and they thought that they could actually have a $30 million business, and they could be the president or the CEO or the founder of a $30 million business, I don't know why that business owner, if they believed in their product and service, which 9 out of 10 business owners do, because they are good people. I believe that human beings are the best intentioned people. And so I don't assume somebody has a bad product or bad service, or they're just going out there in order to be, defamatory to their customers. And so if you really believe you have a good product and service, then I operate under the belief that you should serve as many people, and therefore you have to get big. And so that's what ties to, in the alignment piece, if you as a business owner are committed to growing your business, and you know that you have to serve more people than you currently are, then this setup of a role instead of a person in your organization has to be from the start. Because when you're setting up a role, instead of just having Joe, your friend, or Joe, the person that you like, on board with you, it changes how they view their role. Instead of them being so tied into, oh, I'm the best at this thing, and I'm so unique, and I'm the only person that can talk to customers and that's my value add, being unique is my value add. In order to get really big, being unique is actually not your value add. Being able to process, document what you do well, and to train somebody else how to do it so that you can do the next thing that the organization would require for you to add value, that becomes the game. And if you can teach people how to be excited about doing that, all of a sudden you have this natural learning culture that's looking to add value to the biggest challenge that business owners face, which is, how do I add more revenue? How do I get more known, get more customers in so that we can grow, have more resources to hire more team members, and have the team grow and ideally make more money themselves?
Yeah, that's so good. I have a whole list of questions here. Do you mind if I like rapid fire them with you? I've got, I don't think we can get through all of them if we go too much in depth, but I want to understand your perspective on some of this stuff.
I'm ready.
All right, cool. Let's do it. First, I think maybe I'll start with the hiring side of things. So here's a question: is how can you predict or increase the likelihood that a new hire will be a good fit for your team and get along with your team?
One of the most important interview questions I ask is, what are your 5-year professional goals? And I'm really leaning into this. This isn't just a BS question. It's like, where do you want to be in 5 years? Because if you do not have goals to be a leader, if you do not have goals in order to develop yourself from a graphic designer to a creative director, then I know that once you get in my environment, you're not going to push yourself to learn those skills and to be excited about growing and developing. So I have to know on the front end that that person is interested in growth.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's really good.
And that makes so much sense too, as far as like finding too if they're a good cultural fit, right? Because as a business owner, you want people who are gonna obviously you're gonna spend the money to have them be a part of your team, right? Like you're foregoing maybe a raise or something like that for yourself. It's like, okay, I'm gonna spend money to bring somebody onto my team, and if I'm gonna bring them onto my team, they need to be able to provide value to the business so that it can grow. And if that person is like, well, I just, I'm just happy where I'm at, or like, I whatever, then like, okay, you're not really, you're not willing to like make a sacrifice or develop yourself so that you can provide more value to the business that in turn will help us grow. So that's a really great question, even though it does seem kind of awkward to ask somebody. And it could even be something as simple of them like with health goals or just reading books or something. You can kind of get a little breadcrumb of them wanting to develop themselves and be a better person,
Now,
Totally.
Is there any questions you ask to help kind of identify personality? And I also wonder if you consider, obviously personality for that specific role you want them to have probably is important, but then also personality and how their personality meshes with other people in the team, or is that something you don't consider and you're like, hey, you just got to figure this out amongst yourselves? Like if your personalities clash, so like you just have to learn to be professional and deal with that. Like how do you consider those kinds of things?
We do have an assessment that we have every applicant take after their first interview. So we have a 3-step interview process. I was responsible for recruiting our first 50 team members. So I was our head recruiter until April of last year, and then we hired a second recruiter.
Wow.
Normally for a small business owner, I wouldn't say that you should make this assessment one of the first steps, but I was doing this 5% of my time, and the other 95% of my time, I was doing what all business owners do, which is operation stuff and sales stuff and marketing and finance and organizing things.
Sure.
So the sooner the better, but assessments like this cost money. So the R3 assessment gives me, I don't use it to like say, oh, you won't be a good fit for the role, but I do use it to point out to people, hey, we have a fast pace, high change environment, and your personality type is such that you want stability. Stability and fast pace can work together, but the person who wants stability has to be aware that this is the culture and environment that they're walking into. Whereas if somebody takes an assessment and it says, oh, they really like fast detail, or they're not into details, but they want fast pace, I'm still actually going to ask them the opposite question. Yes, we're fast paced, but the things that we do have to be executed at a immaculate level. So it says you're not detail oriented, but we need you to be detail oriented because we're trusting you with our clients. Walk me through a time when you were detail oriented and something that felt like it was minutia detail, but actually ended up mattering. So I do use what's called an R3 assessment. I would recommend any business owner using like a standard DISC assessment, or Myers-Briggs could be helpful. But I do think it's a really important tool to get everybody talking about this personality piece, because it's a very real thing in a team dynamic.
Yeah, we're
that's
big
really
fans
helpful.
of the Enneagram. Have you ever heard of the Enneagram?
Oh, great. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So there's actually I don't know if you know who Donald Miller is, but he has
Yeah.
a whole system that uses the Enneagram like in a business setting, which is really really good. So
Awesome. Yeah. And I would just use that saying, hey, this is what we are. It's not that anybody is bad. You cannot be discriminatory based off of personality for a role and for role fit, especially because some of the best leaders I know are on their test results. It says that they're shy and maybe more introverted. That doesn't even, that doesn't matter. You can still be an amazing leader or salesperson, but you have to recognize what you're walking into and look at those assessments to develop questions as a business owner that you're thinking with, oh, in this person's role, they're going to have to deal with this and their personality conflicts with it. So let's address it in the interview instead of waiting in 2 months into the role, them finding out that this thing might be an issue for them.
That makes sense. Here's a question for you. How do you pitch like an idea or a vision to a team? You're like, hey, I know this might be kind of hard to sell everybody on it because it's going to be hard for some people to change and other things. How do you come into a meeting like that? Like, all right, I'm going to pitch this idea or vision for the future. And how do you get people on board with that?
It's just such a relevant question for me right now, Ben,
because you're coming into the marketing
mentioned,
team and you're like, okay, new to marketing, but I also need to lead a team. You got to speak the language.
Totally.
You got to understand what their needs are. You got to know how to make it so that they're excited about it too. So yeah. How do you usually do that?
Yes. So I abide by this framework, but there's also this sentence that I always say. So the opening sentence for me is always, imagine a world. I say this to my team. They now kind of make fun of me for saying this.
Imagine a world.
When you become somebody, exactly.
We're
like,
Natalie.
oh, exactly. And they like had this hand, like the sweeping hand movement, like imagine a world. But as a business owner, when you actually can be a visionary and execute, you get your team's buy-in that, holy crap, this person can do something that I can't do. This is the core of being an entrepreneur. It's somebody who has this vision for something and can apply the right resources and take risk in order to get there. So I'm constantly telling this brand new team of mine, imagine a world where this end state that I want is happening. So I'm giving them context as to where I'm going before I pitch my idea. And then I make sure that it happens, and I have a track record of saying these things so that it's not just like I'm coming in there, and leaders make this mistake all the time. I'm not just coming in and saying, oh, imagine this world, and then it's just never really happens. Like I say that with intention, and I'm going to make that world a reality. I sometimes give it a time frame.
Yep.
Okay, 3 months from now.
Yep.
Imagine a world in 3 months from now when XYZ happens. Yep. Then I'm going to go into this framework. 3 steps. I share with them the vision. So that's like my intro to the vision. I kind of like give like a little preview of it. But the vision is, okay, in 3 months from now, we're going to be working with 5 different agencies that have these specialties in these specific areas. I move into the commitment phase. The commitment, I'm asking them for what their commitment needs to be, whatever that is. In this particular example, I could be committing to bring me 4 vendors that you've worked with in the past who were experts in their field so that I'm able to assess, what their skill set is. The next piece of the commitment is my commitment to you guys. Because if I'm asking for somebody's commitment in any team interaction, leaders fail at this because they just ask, but they never actually say how committed they are to helping figure out the problem. So I'm going to say my commitment is I'm going to meet with you guys every week on Tuesdays at 4. I'm going to give you guys feedback and go through this vetting process and be really transparent if I don't move forward with one of the vendors that you chose. The third step is the execution step. That's just the blocking and tackling. So that's where I would maybe say, okay, I'll send a recap later of these 4 things that we all agreed to. This is what this plan's going to look like. But usually we tend to do these things as leaders in the reverse order, where we just go into the execution of this is everything that needs to happen and we need to do this. And they don't understand the vision, and they don't actually understand what your commitment is as a leader or business owner in order to drive that initiative forward.
That's super helpful. Yeah. And I even wonder how much detail that you usually have in a plan when you first present your vision. Because I feel like you need to have some type of plan, or people be like, oh yeah, that's great, but how the heck are we going to do that? And I feel like you also have to somewhat anticipate some objections, right? Because you have to be thinking, okay, here's the objections I would have if I were them, and let me come up with some answers or potential solutions for some of those things. Like, how much of a plan do you feel like is useful? Because I've found in the past that it's nice to bring people along, the journey and help you find some of the solutions because they feel more invested in it. But if you don't have any solutions, then they're just gonna be like, this is dumb, like you're dreaming. You know what I mean? So where's that balance?
I think it depends on the type of team that you are asking this of. If this team is a more entry level team, you are going to expect that you are going to be solving more of the problems. To our executive team, it is my expectation that when they present a problem, they are presenting 3 solutions, and all 3 of those solutions are freaking ridiculously awesome solutions. None of them are sucky. But I'm still training a less experienced team to do the same thing. You don't just come to me, you don't just knock on my door and say, oh, I have this big client problem and this thing is on fire, and then leave it at that. Like, okay, great, what are your 3 solutions? And then I can help coach that person. All 3 of those solutions sucked, and none of those are very good. Like, did you think about these 3 things? And ask more questions. But I would say the team, the salary of the team that you're working with would really depend on how much prep you need to do. The less prep, the more senior the team, the more prep, the more junior the team.
That makes sense. Now, what are some practical ways you keep a team on the same page as it grows or gets bigger? Let's say like somebody's out 1 week or 2 weeks and, you know, they missed a meeting where you made some important decisions. You probably document it somewhere, but how do you keep everybody like in sync if you have like a 10-person team or even more than 10 people? I don't know. Something like a large team, how do you keep them in sync? Like what are some practical ways that you could?
Yeah, what a great question. Gosh, these are such great questions. Oh no. Oh wait, he's back. Ben's back.
Oh,
Great question. I love that question. Oh, you back?
yeah. Now we're here. Now we hear computer audio.
No worries.
And Natalie already answered your question. It was amazing. I think we could just kidding. She didn't answer your question yet. No, you can refresh. Yeah. We'll just hang out here, wait for you.
We'll just be here. We're chilling.
Do you live in California?
No, I'm in Scottsdale.
Okay. It's beautiful over there.
And you're in Colorado,
Denver,
you
yeah.
said? Denver. Yeah. Do you know Pete Vargas?
Man, that sounds so familiar. Pete Vargas?
Advance Your Reach. He does stages for Tony Robbins.
Okay.
Grant Cardone. He's in Colorado.
Okay.
He's a great guy to know.
Pete Vargas.
Ben's back.
Ben's back.
I'm back. Sorry, guys. All right. So my question was, how... All right, let me, where was I? I can't even remember my question. Oh, yeah. Okay. So what are some practical ways to keep your team on the same page as it gets bigger?
The best thing that we did, and this happened right around the 10 employee mark, and we were all virtual when COVID and the quarantine started, was implement a daily alt meeting. And on this daily alt meeting, every single morning, our entire organization hopped on the call. Back then it was 10 employees. Now I think we're at 98 employees. We're not quite at the 100 mark yet. I need to celebrate when we hit 100.
Nice.
I think it happened like next week, but we had about 10 team members. And during that time, every department would give an update of wins from yesterday. Everybody said what they did yesterday, where they won. That is very culturally important, and I'll talk about that in a second. But then they were also talking about priorities for the day. As your team is smaller, you can be more granular with that. With 98 employees, we can't have everybody go through wins and priorities. And actually, at about the 50 employee mark, we had to lop off the priorities section for these departments. So now every morning, it's just, where did we win yesterday? It is a game changer for culture and for morale to set the expectation. Imagine being a new employee and coming into your organization and kicking off by saying, hey, we're going to share some wins from yesterday. And then you go through your marketing department, your sales department, your accounting department, your events department, your fulfillment department, your graphic design department, your ClickFunnels department, and everybody's sharing wins. It sets the tone that, oh, this organization, they win and they look for wins. So when somebody is about to leave here and they haven't won that day, something is heavy and things feel difficult, which all of us have those days. Most days are actually like that. I think if people are honest, they would admit to that. But instead, it's like, okay, how do you figure out ways to win? How do you look for ways that clients are having success or ways that team members are having success in your environment? That entirely changed the trajectory of our business when we started to do that. And it works in person, but it also works for virtual and remote team members.
That's awesome. About how long is that meeting, the all team meeting with 98? And only the team leaders are reporting? Is that how it works?
Yes. So our meeting is 15 minutes. As soon as it starts creeping up to like 16 or 17 minutes, multiple days in a row, I like lop something out of it, or I tell one department, hey, you're talking too long. Like, we need to shore this up. But it's turned into departmental key performance indicators from the day before. We talk about cash collected the day before. We talk about how many new deals we had the day before. Like, we are, for me, that is the first call that I make after at 9 o'clock. Our meetings from 8:45 to 9. At 9 o'clock, the first call I'm making is, hey, events team, did you connect with sales? Because the sales numbers that they reported were not reflected in the events numbers. Like, it allows me operationally to ensure that I actually know what's going on. And then more importantly, to go fix something where departments aren't aligned. So that cross-functional nature of this meeting is, for me, one of the most beneficial things. But it also creates the culture and people seeing new employees and us celebrating team wins.
That's awesome. And I feel like that's super useful. I feel like I've seen that done poorly too, where it's like everybody's like, oh, morning meeting, like what a waste of time. It's going to take 15 minutes. We're just going to talk about nothing. I don't know. We have to do this. You know, I mean, I've been part of like development teams, and sometimes people get off track. So I'm guessing it's really important to keep it on track and be like, guys, this has got to be focused. It's got to be positive, and we have no fluff. It's got to be very focused. That's my guess, right?
I think most people think I'm really just like a very nice person, and they think Brandon is like the hard ass in our business. Brandon is totally a hard ass. He's my husband and co-founder with Grant Cardone. But like, I am the person that is, if I see somebody, I shouldn't tell people this publicly, but you know, here we are in a podcast, and I don't think any of our employees will listen. I have 100% accuracy. If I look through every single employee on that call, and if people are looking like this or aren't engaged and just have this total demeanor of being checked out, 100% accuracy. If they do this 3 days in a row as I'm looking at this, they are quitting within the next 2 weeks. You can watch people if your culture is one that creates energy and it's exciting to be in. I will promise you that you'll be able to see what team members aren't a fit. And for us, our core values resonate with, one of them is inspirational. If somebody is showing up to a meeting looking disengaged and eating or doing something else, that's not inspirational. And I will follow up with that person and say like, hey, is everything going okay? Is there an issue that you're running into, so that I can keep a pulse on this team? I mean, you don't grow a business as quickly as we've grown without being intentionally in tune and checking in with people and being hard on people when they're showing signs of disengagement.
That makes sense. What would you say are some like practical tips for onboarding new hires? Like, what's the right way to do it and what's the wrong way to do it when you're onboarding something? I know there's like onboarding and then there's kind of training. We could maybe talk about training separately, but I mean, what would you say, like, what's a successful way to do it, and what do you see people do wrong a lot?
I view onboarding like boot camp, and some of our new employees might equate it to something like hazing. It should never be hazing, but it should be intense. I think that the average business owner assumes that onboarding should be this slow, steady introduction. For me, it's the opposite. I want to know within the first month if this person has what it takes in our environment. Our environment is very intense. We look at results every single day. You are held highly accountable environment. Our team loves working around each other, but there's a lot going on around here constantly. And so for our onboarding, we require people to read 4 books in the course of a month. Most organizations maybe don't have to do 4 books, at least 1 book. As business owners, if you've read a book before and it changed the trajectory of how you look at leadership or how you've grown and developed yourself, why wouldn't you give somebody else that kind of tool for success so that they understand your philosophy without you having to share it with them or teach it to them yourselves? So I'm a big proponent of using books in onboarding and just taking the overall philosophy that you want that first month to be the most intense month, to know that they're going to be a fit, instead of coming at it with, oh, I'm just going to see and let Nicole kind of go through the process and figure out if she's a good fit.
That's really good. Yeah, because you're like, hey, the more intense it is or the more focused it is, the sooner you know, sooner they know. It's actually good for everyone because they can move on if they need to. You can move on if you need to. Makes a
What
lot
are
of
those
sense.
books that you have everybody read?
One of them is called The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. The other one is called Sell or Be Sold by Grant Cardone. One is called Beyond Positive Thinking. It's by an author named Dr. Robert Anthony. That has been a really impactful book to my husband and myself. But he used to tab and highlight every single one of these books. He tabbed and highlighted, I think, 10,000 of them and would just give them away for free to people who would be interested enough in developing themselves because it made that much of an impact. Sorry, I'm just pulling up my book right now because in my book, Teamwork, I don't make this a required reading because it talks about firing people in it. And I think all of our employees might be terrified of firing. It's like, although this gives them the recipe for success in our environment. In chapter 8, I have a chapter called Onboarding, and it actually has a visual of our exact onboarding plan with the books that we have people read, the tasks we have them do for that first 4 weeks that they're coming on with us.
That's really good. Now, on the flip side, there's the onboarding. Well, I guess maybe talk about training, and then I want to talk about firing because I'm really curious about the right way to fire someone, in your opinion. So, what about training? So, hopefully I'm using the right terminology. Onboarding, I think of as like getting you onto your organization. Training, more like their job specific or role specific knowledge and stuff like that. Do you guys hire people that are like, hey, they're pretty much trained because you're hiring like experts already and you're only training them on your internal systems, or are you training people how to do their job and on your systems? Or like, how much training is there? Is that done by the previous person that did the job, or is it by a training person of some kind? Like, how does that work?
Such a great question. These are like the best. This is how you know when somebody's like in the throes of
Exactly.
leading a team.
I have really specific questions. Yeah, exactly.
So training. I am a freak. And I have this document that's called our process tracker. And in our organization, we have about 250 standard operating procedures that get updated almost on a daily basis, because if you are growing, things should be breaking. If you grow, your processes are breaking constantly. And so when we started with by department documenting all of these processes. So if you're a graphic designer, you're documenting where you save things in the file structure and the naming convention in a standard operating procedure. That way you don't always have the luxury of having the person before train the next person, because the person before could quit unexpectedly, they could have a medical issue. And so all of this stuff for us is just constantly being looked at and documented. There isn't one specific person that is responsible for the training, but we do break down all of these processes in this really awesome format called Tell Me, Show Me, Let Me, Coach Me. And the idea is, from an adult learning theory standpoint, you tell somebody how to do something. Oh, I'm going to tell you how we save designs in this folder. Then I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm actually going to open the screen up, show you where to do it. The tell me is normally in a process format, right? Like I have written down steps. So tell me, then I'm showing you, then I'm letting you go do that thing. And then the coach me is, okay, now I let you do it and I watch you do it. And I say like, yes, you did it right, or no, you didn't. Now, saving a design is something that is fairly straightforward, but as business processes become more complex, that methodology really helps you put safeguards in place so that the manager sees team members knowing that they have the competency to do the thing that they're supposed to be doing. And oftentimes we just don't go to that level because we don't have the time, or we don't really think about, oh, I've never watched this person actually hop on a client call before. And then you let them talk to your clients and they say stupid shit. And you're like, I can't believe they just said that. But they've been saying it since day one and they thought that was totally fine.
Yeah, for sure. No, that makes sense. When it comes to standard operating procedures, if you have whatever you said, 200, 300 of those, and they're changing constantly, just curious what software you use to manage all that.
Google
Sheets, yeah.
Docs.
Okay, cool.
I use a sheet document.
Wondering. Yeah, we use we're just starting. We actually use like Dropbox paper, so very similar. It's just like literally like a document. We're looking into changing. We interviewed guy Chris Ronzio. He founded a company called Trainual. We interviewed him last week, and he has some. So I'm diving into some of that and like trying to decide I love his software, so I'm probably going to use some of that. Has some SOPs and stuff like that. So I was just kind of curious what works for you guys. I mean, if you're changing stuff constantly, Google Docs are super flexible because you can kind of do whatever you want in them, which is nice.
For sure.
Cool. So it's just like a network of interconnected linked Google Docs where it's like, hey, do this, and then it links to the other one. It's kind of interconnected.
Yeah.
That's cool.
When we
That makes
had
sense.
25 employees, I hired a role called a business process specialist, and this woman is my angel. Her name's Heather, and she is primarily responsible for ensuring that all of the processes for really all of the departments that I touch, if there's something that's a mess or awry, she just like goes in there like this like scrubbing team and just like scrubs the whole thing
Nice.
down to ensure all of it is updated and talking appropriately
Smart.
with the other departments.
I feel like that's super important to have an owner that's like responsible, even though it's not your full-time job. Even on a small team, you probably need to have like one person. It's like, hey, it's your job to make sure this is updated. Maybe everybody
Yep.
needs to update their own pieces, but somebody needs to make sure it all works together. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So what back to the training aspect, when you're training, someone, how do you, I guess, how do you factor in the fact that if someone is helping train the new person, obviously that you have SOPs and stuff that helps do a lot of it, but do you factor in the fact that they might be able to not do as much of their job in the meantime while they're training a new person? Is that true, or is it more like they're just running and the other person's got to catch up with them, or how does that work?
I'm sure there is a piece of that. I have certainty that in any environment where you are growing, there is compression of people who are opting into being a leader, the ones who are doing the training of their time when they're bringing on these other team members.
Yep.
How do I factor that?
Is it more just on that person to deal with it, kind of, or is it like, hey, there's like, oh, cool, we'll duck, the responsibilities decrease for that time period, or like, how do you handle that kind of stuff?
We're 10x around here, and
You're just like, we're just gonna get it done.
people in this
Yeah.
environment are looking for ways to stand out and to show that they have what it takes and are willing.
Yeah.
I mean, quite honestly, the team sees me work 12 to 14-hour days. They know that I'm training new team members, and they see the work ethic. And so
Yeah.
if I'm sitting here saying that, and Brandon is sitting here saying that, and we demonstrate that, they are very excited because they have goals that we ask them about in their interview process, and we ask them about through this process we call personal, professional, and financial goal planning. If you're sitting here telling me I want to be the creative director in this department, but right now I'm a graphic designer and maybe I'm making $70,000 right now, but I want to be making $100,000 right in the future. Okay, great. Let's freaking go. Let's get you the skill set that you need in order to add $30,000 of income to you, which means revenue to our organization. And how you can do that is by training other people and documenting your processes and helping us fix all of these things that will break around you and you be a leader in the role that you're in today. And so when people get that opportunity, I am sure that they have this compression thing. It's something that honestly doesn't come across my radar because they're so excited about being able to grow and demonstrate that they have grown in these ways.
That's awesome. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So it's kind of like more like helping them see the value of what this is on them. And they know that they're like, okay, first of all, their mindset, they're definitely more of a growth mindset type person. But also they're like, hey, I see immediately how this benefits me and the rest of the team if I do this. So they're very motivated to do it. So it's less of like, oh man, I got to do a new thing. It's like, cool, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to do this and we're going to kill it. It's like
For
a
sure.
different type of perspective, which is awesome.
Totally.
How about letting people go? Like you said, like how do you make firing less painful? What's the wrong way to do it? What's the right way to do it?
Yeah. You have to correct people in the moment when something goes wrong. And the biggest mistake I see business owners make is the person shows up 10 minutes late consistently, or they don't put their report in on time. And it's these little agitations that build. And by the time that they do the thing, they showed up to this client call totally unprepared, or they just messed up this whole presentation. By the time that moment comes, that's when they want to make the decision. You're gone. You can no longer work here anymore. And it's so emotional. Whereas when the first time they were 10 minutes late, and that's, if that's a big thing in your culture, the first time there's the issue that frustrates you, it is your responsibility to create confidence in the business that you are creating to address that and say, hey, did you know that, our start time was 8:30 and you showed up at 8:45? Oh no, I didn't know. That's good to know. So that next time when they show up at 8:45 and you're like, wait, we did have the conversation, then you can move very swiftly into, Fortunately, I have to give you a written warning on this. You knew we had this conversation last time. Do you remember that? Oh, yeah, I remember that. Okay, great. So next time this happens, it's going to move into performance improvement plan because you're late to this client call. And this performance improvement process just flows very easily, but it's always about servicing the client or creating a team environment. It's never about Natalie being an asshole or the business owner being a jerk or being too demanding. And framing it in that way. I also use that vision, commitment, execution framework in our performance improvement process. So my book, I think it's actually the final chapter, I lay out what our performance improvement process is from that verbal warning all the way through termination. But I'm using like the vision for this. Why is it important that you show up on time? Is it actually because I need you to be there at that time and the whole world's going to melt down if you're not? No, probably not. But if a client comes in and you are late to a client call or your team wasn't able to prep because you weren't there, it impacts our client's ability to grow. And if you remember from our interview and from this whole process that we've constructed here at Cardone Ventures, we're here to help business owners achieve their personal, professional, and financial goals through the growth of their businesses. They're not going to be able to grow their businesses if our team isn't on time, isn't prepped, and isn't ready to go when they call us and they need our help. And so it's painting this bigger picture instead of just arguing and being frustrated about the one thing where the business owner ends up looking like the ass and like so rigid when it's really not that at all. It's about building a sustainable business that you have confidence in and you're not worried about. I get so frustrated. I don't need to worry about somebody being late. Like, I need to worry about how I'm going to go acquire 500,000 more business owners into our ecosystem. And now I'm going to talk about Sally Joe, who's showing up consistently late all the time. And I have to have that be this confidence reducer. No. So it's my responsibility as the person that's a leader in the environment to ensure that there isn't a lack of confidence that I'm accidentally creating because I'm not willing to confront significant issues. You can tell I probably had a lot of these conversations. Sure. We have 100 of these employees that are stabilized, but we've fired 70 of them in 3 years. So like we are very confident in this process because we want to know quickly who's going to win. But the people who stick with us, they move from managers to senior managers to directors to senior directors to vice presidents. People making $60,000 in their first year with us who are now making $250,000 because they go through this and they get it. And there's this structure in place. And when you properly align people with what the role is, it really is amazing how something can grow with the right leadership and guidance and facilitation.
With compensation, do you find that are a lot of people on your team like W-2 employees, or are they 1099? And then is it commission based, or is there a mix of stuff? And do you find one motivates others, like, hey, there's a promise of this VP role down the road 10 years, or is it like, hey, you sell this much or part of this much, you make X, Y, and Z?
I'm a freak about this too. So all of our team members are W-2, and every single person in our environment has an incentive compensation plan. So we have base salary, we have incentive compensation, but then there's also commission. So anybody can sell anything in our environment or bring us a lead or bring us somebody who can do business with Cardone Ventures and make money off of that. Now in some, medical services organizations or professional services organizations, you can't set up a commission structure like that. But in most businesses, you can figure out how to pay and incentivize your team members to solve the number one problem that every business owner has, which is not enough leads. So we always have that in place. But the incentive plan, it really does depend on what they negotiated in their base and what we were targeting for that role. But we're in general terms targeting between 10 to 20% of their base salary as their incentive comp target, so that we can use key performance indicators to drive the behavior that we're looking to drive in that role.
What percent did you say of the base salary do you use for the incentive?
10 to 20.
Okay, 10 to 20%. That's cool.
So someone's making $50,000 a year. If I'm targeting 10%, that would be $5,000. I would obviously love to give that person a 20% target. But if I was originally targeting, let's just do this math real quick. If I was originally targeting that I could pay $60,000 for this role, I would want to give them the 20% target, right? So that would total out totally 60. But they might negotiate saying, oh, my last place I was making 55. I'm not willing to take any less than 55. Well, okay, we'll give you 55, but then the incentive target has to go down.
Yeah, that's cool. That makes sense. With the commissions, I'm just curious how that would work. I'm thinking about my business, and like someone that isn't strictly sales, do they get the same incentive as someone that is not in sales and they bring something? How do you guys handle that kind of thing, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, it's handled straight away, the exact same. So our sales
Okay.
team, we have one centralized products and services guide. In the products and services guide, we have our prices and then what the sales commission is off of it. What I'm most proud about is our recruiter. She's a recruiter, okay? And she's not a normal recruiter. She's totally 10x and awesome, but she like came from like a traditional HR recruitment background. And she sold and made like 15 grand in commission just from asking people and learning sales skills if they want to move forward with purchasing an event or going through a process or whatever she's been selling them on. $15,000 to a recruiter, like that's insane. Nobody does that. And she is so bought into us because she's making more money than she's ever made before, and she has confidence because she's learned how to sell. And when people learn how to sell, they can do anything.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you found any downsides to doing sales incentives, like people coming on board that aren't a good fit for your team? Like, does incentivizing sales have any downside that you've noticed, or not really?
You know, we just brought on a technology department, and we are having a little bit of difficulty in the recruitment side, knowing that we do have more of a sales-oriented culture specific to those types of skill sets. We'll
Sure,
overcome
that
this.
makes
We'll
sense.
figure that out, but it
Yeah,
has not
sure.
created an issue. I mean, we've over the
Right.
last 3 years, we've generated $70 million in revenue,
Right.
and we
I'm
have
not. I'm not worried about you guys. Yeah. No.
yeah, we're doing pretty well on our
Yeah.
and it's created the right thing. It's created the lift that we need. And Brandon and I
Yeah.
know that is also the other thing as a business owner. You know who's actually committed and bought in to helping the business grow through their ability to be uncomfortable through helping you with sales. If they're not willing to
Yeah.
promote your business, if they're not willing to do the hard things and ask for the close, but yet they're willing to come to you and say, "Oh, I want to make $10,000 more this year." To me, honestly,
Yeah.
I'm like, "Great. When was the last time you helped us solve our biggest problem, which is promoting this organization?" "Oh, I didn't think that
Yeah.
was my job." Great. It's not my job.
Yeah.
It's no one's technical job, but actually it's all of our jobs to be able
Yeah.
to get paid more.
Yeah, for sure. With sorry, I think this is my last question. I know we were probably running over time, but last question. From the sales perspective, is how do you logistically determine who gets the sale? Is it, who closes it, and what does that mean? Or is it, how does that actually get counted? Or do you split that in different ways?
Sometimes it gets split if somebody has been working, let's say a salesperson has been working a client, and we have through our CRM like notes of all of the outbound calls and the follow up, but then they show up on site with us and one of our marketing team members closes them. We will have consideration, and we'll just split it between the two if we can document and prove that there was legitimate work that was done initially, and so we try not
Gotcha.
to have fights and disputes, and our director of sales is pretty good at refereeing
That makes sense.
those.
Yeah. I'm just thinking like logistically for us, we have like kind of a sales administrator role where somebody's doing a lot of the setup of meetings and stuff. And then somebody else comes in and does like a discovery call or sales meeting. So I'm thinking about, okay, maybe that would be some type of split, or maybe it would be mostly the person doing the call. I just was curious if you guys do something similar, if it's different than that.
I would play with it. I play with it constantly. Every single month on the
Yeah.
15th of the month, I look at who's making more money in our organization based off of their incentive plan. If the incentive plan is not creating growth in the organization, and month over month, Cardone Ventures didn't grow, but Joe is making more money, I'm looking at, okay, why did he make more money if we didn't actually grow? And so then if I recognize, oh, we incentivized the wrong thing, in every incentive plan, I have the ability to change it within a certain time frame. I try to give people at least, especially in sales, I'm giving them some sort of headway, and we try not to play with our sales team commission, but
Sure.
the incentive plans for our team members with key performance indicators will change month to month if it's not working. And I tell them,
That makes sense.
honestly, it was like arbitrage. You thought you were adding value by doing this thing, and you made money last month, which is great, but you didn't actually add value. And in the real world, nothing happened. Like there was no monetary gain through you doing this. So you made this money then, but that doesn't mean you're entitled to it just because the first time you did it, it paid you.
Gotcha. So it's like the salary stays stable, but the incentive plan can be tweaked and adjusted constantly. Which
Totally.
is, okay, that's really interesting. That's cool. Okay, I get it.
That's awesome.
Mark, I've been asking a lot of
Well,
questions.
I
Do you
mean,
have any
I've
questions?
just enjoyed hearing all these questions and answers, and I'm excited to hear your takeaways, Ben. What are your
Oh yeah, I've been furiously taking
Yeah,
notes over
exactly.
here. So I have my own notes, and then I also have a list
All
of
right.
takeaways to share. So I'll go over a few of these. So a few things that I'm taking away personally that I think will be really useful is like when you're pitching your team, first you say, imagine a world, and then you set the future vision and you say, hey, this is what it's going to look like. And then you start laying it down from there, which I think is a great tip. Very practical. When your team grows, do a daily all team meeting, sharing wins to keep people on the same page. That's a great takeaway. Your approach to onboarding is like boot camp. Immerse them quickly and see if they have what it takes. When training, use the tell me, show me, let me, coach me method. I'm going to be using that. I think this is one of my favorites that I've experienced myself, as you have to correct people in the moment when something goes wrong so it doesn't become too big or too emotional long term.
That's so good.
That's it.
So
Okay.
good, Ben. All right, Natalie,
stuff.
we like to leave our audience with a takeaway, like an action item to do, after they listen to a podcast and they get all these great, notes and get inspired to grow their teams. And if you could leave somebody with maybe one action item that would benefit them the most, what would that be?
Man, way to put me on the spot. You couldn't have
I know.
prepped me for that one. One action item.
Go buy Teamwork.
Right,
the new
exactly.
book by
Well,
Natalie.
that is a really good takeaway, because
Yep,
everything, all of the
sure
questions
is.
that you asked, like this is all written in the same kind of snarky but authoritative voice that I speak in. My one action item would be, as a business owner, if you can clarify where your business is going, the rest of it becomes very easy. So if I was a business owner listening to this, think about where you want to be in 10 years from now. And if it's bigger and you imagine having this amazing team around you, then what are you not willing to accept in today's environment in order to get there? If it's not bigger, and if it's smaller or the same size, maybe you're more okay with poor performing employees. But if it is bigger and it's something greater and something that's more fulfilling and impactful, then you should raise the bar as to what you're willing to accept every single day. But it all starts with ultimately where the business wants
that's
to
really
go.
great. Hey, where can people connect with you, find more out about your book, and just how to hear more about what you're up to?
I am very active on Instagram. If you want to get the book, you can go to cardoneventures.com/teamwork and just pay shipping and handling. The Teamwork book is honestly like a business owner's guidebook for how to handle these situations. So I would definitely recommend that business owners do that if you're interested. And connect with me via Instagram, because I love doing all the things on stories and direct messages. I manage all of that
Awesome.
myself. So would love to get to know you guys and connect with you there.
Fantastic. Well, hey, thanks so much for being on the show. And thank you for listening to The Friday Habit. If you go to thefridayhabit.com, you can find show notes for this episode. There you can also find links to our websites and ways to get in touch. And at the bottom of the page, you can download our guide to the Friday Habit system that will show you how to set aside one full day each week to dedicate working on your business instead of in your business.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review in the Apple Podcasts app. And if you have a question or topic you'd like us to cover, don't forget to record us a quick voice memo and send it to hello@thefridayhabit.com.
That's right. And until next time, live every day like it's Friday.